Welcome, I'm Patti.
I'm Jackie, and together we are Grow Live, where we answer your farm and garden questions and offer gardening knowledge of the best practices weekly. Our mission is to help you and other growers grow a healthier world, one question at a time, one gardener at a time. We want to help you be successful in growing healthy food and creating a healthier planet.
That's right, Jackie, and you and I are both passionate about that. How you doing today?
I'm good today. How about you?
Well, I'm really good. I woke up to a little snow on the mountain, but we're out here in the prairie, so it's a dust of snow that it just looks like a heavy frost, really. But what we need is a pile of snow. The farmers and ranchers are really starting to feel the hurt that we're going to be pretty dry. But I'm doing good. So, what should we talk about this week, Jackie?
Since we're in our spring action series, maybe we can help some of the common problems around composting.
Composting. You know what? I just love talking about composting. I love helping people about composting. And for all of these followers that know how much I love cattle, I like talking compost as much as cattle. So that's a whole mouthful there, Jackie. So super excited to talk about composting.
Putting my notebook out.
Yep.
Because I know you're going to drop golden.
And we will drop you some hints here.
Applause for all our virtual friends. Yay!
Some composting this morning, and we're going to try to keep it brief but to the point, and then we're going to take a bunch of questions on composting. So let me share that screen with you so you guys can kind of see what we're talking about here. And this is what our goal is, right? This is what finished compost looks like. And I got to admit, this is probably my best compost, and I've been composting since 2014 and making about 3 or 4 batches at least a year. And the way the weather is this year, because March is acting like April. So I'm a little worried that April might act like May. So I am going to make more compost this year. That is my goal, to make more compost no matter what. And I've discovered that a lot of people are positive as exactly why we compost. I mean, as gardeners, we know we love compost. We got to have compost. But I thought, well, we would go over a little bit as to why. So the 3 main reasons, and these are more universal reasons, is, for example, Harvard University uses finished compost for landscaping instead of chemical fertilizers. Now, I am all about that. I got a show coming up on the 30th. It's a training on converting your lawn to stop growing as much grass and grow food. And so you might want to think about joining us. That I think it's going to be for an hour. And another reason is the trash. Boy, the trash that goes to landfill, and it's got all this degradable stuff in it, it's making methane. And that methane is way worse than anything else us humans are doing on the planet for the most part. So if we can stop that from happening, and I think it's just a crying shame every time I go to the dumpster or to the landfill that all that products that should be composted need to be composted. So we can be using it on our farms, ranches, and gardens. Another thing, compost saves money by reducing the trash costs. So if you don't even send it there in the first place, then you're going to reduce that cost. And transportation costs in eastern Montana, and I'm sure lots of other places that are rural in the country and in the world are spending a lot of fuel and a lot of money transporting stuff that could be composted inside that site. So what's compost used for? So we amended the soil with it, right? And what it's really truly doing is adding soil life to our soil. So that soil life will do the mineralization for our plant. And so that's how Harvard University is able to not use the commercial fertilizers, because the microbes do that work for you. And major water holding capabilities when you have compost versus not. So that's just unbelievable. Increases the humus, adds organic matter. So the last year when I tested my soil, my organic matter was up around 5, a little over 5. That's 5%, right? Which is kind of off the charts right now for our area. Lots of farmers are in the 1, 2, and maybe a really good farm at 3. So we need to get those increased. And we get all the benefits of the soil microbes. And so I always talk about soil microbes. A lot of people don't know what they look like. They have no idea, you know. So I thought, well, I'll throw you up a few slides because I took Eliane Ingham's courses and run the microscope quite a bit. And so this is some of them. So the fungi is in the middle, and they just kind of look like segmented sticks. And they could be all different sizes and colors. And this is a water bear over here. Just the coolest thing I've ever seen in a microscope. And then anytime we have something round or even oval, those are spores, and they're going to turn into something. This one that I'm pointing at is a fungal spore, but these, I think these are mycorrhizal spores, but they could be most anything. Even little tiny round ones are going to turn into something. This one right here is turning into something. But you look at this little clear looking stuff, that's sand, to give you an idea of how tiny of world we're talking about here with these soil microbes. That's a little tiny grain of sand. And so, you know, I do some consulting, and you always think, well, in general, you think, well, nature is decomposing constantly. How difficult could this be to make compost? Right? I mean, really. So it turns out it can be. But I have discovered from helping other people that what our main problems might be, and can help you with that. So these are 2 large piles of compost, which the one my friend here, Joanna is working on, is a medium-sized pile, right? So that's probably 3 times bigger than the piles I make at my yard. And this one's a large heap. That's a farm size one. It's probably 20 foot wide by 30 foot long. And so what kind of problems could they run into? And surprisingly, they run into the same problems as our little ones do, is that usually there's a problem with the moisture, right? So moisture is key. The soil microbes are water living organisms. They're aquatic. So when you take water out of compost, you're not going to have much activity, right? Because they need it. They need it to be able to function. They need it to be able to make compost. So this wetness is the key for, especially in our dry climate, right? We're in a high plain, semi-desert in Montana with very little moisture and dry air. And so getting it initially wet is going to pay big dividends, and it needs to be this wet. I've just picked up a wad of fresh compost that just got mixed up, and I wring it through my fingers. That's how wet it should be. And it's a challenge to get it that wet. But next problem we might run into is the temperature. And so lots of people start composting, and they're like, yeah, I'm composting. And I said, what temperature has it got to? And they're like, temperature? Well, it's warm. I can put my hand in it. This is what, if you can put your hand in it, it's not warm enough, right? That we want it to be getting up there 130, 140, even up to 150, even touch higher if you're going to turn it to really get those microbes working. And the bacteria is reproducing at alarming rates, causing that heat when that happens. Other problem is in town, we don't want those compost heat piles that those farmers are making in town. So the students and I that I work with put together this stacked cedar stacking system. So it looks decent, doesn't look bad. And we can be successful with it. Those are just some ideas. And I'm going to stop sharing this.
Nick says, how can I get a large 20 by 30 pile to heat?
And that's a big pile, right? It's not a huge pile, but it's a pretty big pile. So super dry area and sunny, right? So Montana's the opposite of conditions of what you would like for composting. And getting it initially wet is the key. So for us gardeners, we want to get it soaking wet right off the bat, right? And so I do that with a tub. And so I put the wood chips, the paper products, the leaves, everything in this boat. It's about 4 foot long and 2.5 foot wide, or 2 foot wide probably. It's a calf boat, calf sled. So I fill that with those dry products, and then I fill that up with water and saturate that stuff, where you just have to, because it's going to suck more moisture away from other stuff because of those dry products. So in Nick's situation, though, I told him, I says, man, you're either going to have to use a fire truck type of sprayer to spray a mist over the top of it, get a good solid rain for 2 or 3 days, which we can laugh at here in Montana. That's probably not going to happen very well. Not yet anyhow. Or a snow that would be wet enough to soak right in. And or use drip irrigation. And he's a market gardener, so he had drip irrigation. So he run some lines over the top of the whole pile, run it solid for 3 days, and then he got it wet enough to start heating, and he's off and running. So now that he's got it wet, then he's only going to turn it when it gets up over 150, up toward 160 degrees. And then he's going to knead it like bread. He's going to take the dry outside, put it in the middle, and recook that part that hasn't been cooked yet. So he's going to do that with drip irrigation, which for home gardeners, you could do it with the little tiny mister sprinkler over the top of it. Once it's wet, it tends to stay pretty good. I mean, once in a while, if you get a hot, dry, dusty winds that is really hurting it, then you might need to rewater. But
so was that what Sue's challenge last week? She asked me, and I see she typed in the comments, she had a small container that heated up to 79 degrees Fahrenheit. It stayed there for a few days, then it cooled down to room temperature, but she said it never got above 79 degrees and the paper never decomposed.
Yep. So 2 things are going wrong there, Sue. One of which is the other main problem that happens, and people just don't get enough nitrogen in the pile. And so if we've got wood chips, paper, leaves, that can't be more than 50% of the mass of the pile. This isn't by weight, it's by mass. The paper should decompose relatively quickly because it's thin, and you get it wet, it's going to decompose fairly fast. But yeah, so moisture and getting enough green products in there. So, and when I can't find enough green products, which we're talking green products or your nitrogen products, which would be fresh cut plants, any legumes. That's why if I really run out of stuff, I can get alfalfa pellets or alfalfa hay, which I use a lot of alfalfa hay in mine, just because it's hard to get enough volume of product. And so small piles can be a problem. Let's see what she's got. How often should you turn a pile? I've heard it get hotter than 160 and cooler than 130. Yep. So you don't turn it until it reaches that close to that 160. So you just leave it alone if it isn't up to 160. If it goes below 130, or if it maintains at 130 for a long period of time, then it needs turned to get air in it and probably water back into the pile. So, and those are all hot thermal composting methods. But what else we got, Jackie?
Can I just ask really quick for my own, is the reason you want to get it hot, somebody said, I think it was Lori said last week, is that kills the weed seeds? Like, because I've never worried about that. I've just always just turned it outside and let it sit and turn it, and I've never had a problem. I've never measured the temperature.
Yep, you're doing more of a passive way, and that's some of the ways I'm going to be helping people learn how to do too. But if you're trying to make a super high quality compost, there's 3 reasons why we want to get it that hot. 1, it's going to kill the weed seeds. 2, it's going to kill any diseases and pathogens get killed out. So you don't have to worry about any pathogens that could transfer into humans through food or whatever once you get to that 160. And so that's why those are the composting rules. If you was a commercial composter, you have to abide by these rules or you won't be in business. But home gardeners, that's, you know, you're doing your own thing on your own property with your own food source. But a commercial gardener or commercial composter's got to get to the 160. They also have to turn it at least 5 times. But you don't want to turn it until it's up there toward the 150 mark, because every time you turn it, you're slowing down the pile. It slows it down, and you start destroying fungi, which that fungi, like the picture in the middle of the slide back there, we want the fungi in there. They're part of what's really making this thing work. So that's why we don't want to turn it any oftener than we have to, but we still would like to turn it the 5 times. When we get a pile that just kind of rides at 130, it doesn't seem to be kicking up and doing what you want it to do, it needs turned. It needs air in it to keep it from being anaerobic. And so once you aerate it, then and if there's enough nitrogen in it, it'll take right off. It'll start rising right away, get right up to 150. I've had piles ride at 150 for a week and a half, and not have to worry about them. Charles Downing, he's over in a different environment, right? He's super wet and much warmer climate than we do. He doesn't even turn his piles but once, but he's in a wet climate, right? So he's not losing any of the moisture, where we can lose moisture overnight just because we've got a hot wind or something. Okay, what else we got?
Sue said, how do you store your food scraps before making your pile, or do you just add it to a growing pile?
Personally, I've been adding it to a growing pile or a bed in my lawn or garden that I've already got mulch on, and then I'll kick some mulch over the top of it. It decomposes. It's just doing nature's way. But you could add it to a pile outside. You know, you have to worry about getting cats and dogs and stuff, mostly dogs, carrying off your products or whatever, or, you know, messing them up. But you could cover them up with some, like, I always have a hay around, because I use that in my composting and my mulching. So then you throw some of that over the top of it. Or you can put it into Bokashi composting method, that you put the microbes on the food waste and keep it in a sealed container. And then it doesn't smell. It's got a lot of molasses in it, and it's got a lot of bacteria in it, and it's breaking down those food waste before you add it to your pile. So I know people that do that all winter long. They've got containers full of their garbage with the biology in it, breaking it down in their garages, and then they add that to their compost heaps. So
like worm bin?
That's probably the best way. Yeah, or you could do a worm bin, but I found the indoor worm bins, they don't consume as much as I do, or as much waste as I create. So you got to kind of watch that, where that you got to keep them kind of in balance. They're a whole nother ball game. But what else we got? What Cleo wants to know?
Okay, we have a question about wood chips. Why do I still have wood chips after 8 months of composting?
So those wood chips are super fibrous carbon, right? And they do not break down fast. And if they're not getting their pile wet enough, then it might be years before they're gonna break down. If their pile's not heating, then it's gonna take a long time to break down too. And there's just a certain percentage of the wood chips and wood products that don't break down in one composting run. So I screen those out, like the picture I showed you was a screen compost. I screened out the wood chips that didn't decompose, and the sticks and stuff that didn't decompose in the first round. I kicked them over into my next batch. And so as I do that, I'm taking all the microbe, not the whole mass of microbes, but the population that's in the microbe pile, and adding that to my next one. So it's kind of like a sourdough starter, where that I'm putting some microbes from one pile into the next ones that are in my current piles is way, way higher than when my first year of composting. But they will break down, but you're going to have to compost them maybe another 2 times. So you screen them out, then the screenings you have now is finished compost and ready to be used. Those wood chips and sticks kick back and go back into your pile again. Some cartilage and some of the fish might need to be screened out, but most all the time when I put fish in my compost heaps, especially if they're heating, I don't have any bones left, nothing. They just totally melt right down into the pile super fast because they're super high in nitrogen. So if you need to heat a pile, they're a product that can really heat a pile fast, just some fish waste.
We have 7 different piles, and we put like things like corn stalks and sunflower stalks that take a really long time to decompose in some like in one pile, and then I don't know, we just have different things in different piles. And then, you know, Mike's got his in the mini farm, and we have 2 up by the house, and it just depends.
Yeah.
We can usually make a batch of compost about 2 weeks in the heat of summer.
Yeah, but it looks like compost. It's not finished compost. So that's compost that's still got microbes working. And you'd want to just set that somewheres for 6 months. I like to put it in the shade and put some mulch over the top of it and keep it damp in order to get that time involved in it. So I try to get people to think about your compost when it comes out fresh like that. It looks like compost, smells like compost, but it's not cured. That would be like trying to take an 8 or 9-year-old kid and have them do my workload at my abilities. Well, that's not possible, right? In fact, they're going to take more work from you to get them to work, right? So they're kind of, when you put that fresh compost out onto your soil, it's stealing some of the capabilities of the microbes already in your soil to help break down that compost further. So it's just not quite finished, what they call finished compost. So yeah, it's really almost a year process to really get high quality, right? And then a lot of people don't know what high quality is, and I fully understand that. But this high quality that I'm talking about, that we can see all that soil life in the microscope and stuff, and it's that black and rich and smells like the greatest smell on earth, right? So that's got so much life in it that I can use that to inoculate all my other compost, my soils, my plants, to make it into compost extracts and teas and stuff. So there's like different qualities of compost, and our home gardener isn't going to look at it under the microscope and know. But we do want to know that we need to let it cure, because we want those microbes going out there and working like adults and get the job done and not stealing from our soil. Does that make any sense?
Well, nobody's really explained it that far before, I guess. So
no, lots of people don't. There's so many errors out there on the internet and stuff that, you know, and even when I start, like, okay, I've got compost, look how great it is. And then finally, somehow in the messaging with the class, I finally figured out, well, that's not cured. I said, oh, that part of the class needs to be stepped up where the people really understand that part, because it can hurt you where you want it to be helping you, right? And we've went through all this work to make it. We want it to really work for us. So yeah, that's part of our message, and that's why we have the show, Jackie, so we can really help other people really get it.
Yeah, because I don't want to be putting something on that's actually taking away. Yeah. I mean, what's the point? And we've done that for years, so I'm excited. We're getting a soil test this year that's actually going to give me my organic matter. Last year I had 2 tests done, and the company that I was getting it from didn't ever give us the organic matter. So
yeah, you got it requested, I think.
They don't do it. So it's important when you order your soil tests, make sure you're going to a company that is going to give you that information. So I ordered.
Well, that's a quick question for you to ask me, but may I have a quick answer. I think what we're going to do, just from time restraint, is we need to do that by itself in a separate show, because there is methods that we can use, and I'm a whole year worth of those methods last year, and I plan on doing even more of them this year, because I see the barrier entry is the compost, and the barrier entry to get the compost done right is even bigger. So I think we'll make a new show out of that as to how to make it lots easier. And I seen in the comment there, Cleo asked about the barrel composting, and I just really don't like the barrel composting, and everybody that I've trained under doesn't like it. It doesn't heat up enough because it's not, it doesn't, you need, it's this is kind of back to high school science. It needs to have core mass. So it needs to be at least 3 foot by 3 foot by 3 foot, and preferably maybe even 40 inches by 40 inches by 40 inches, right? Of volume of starting stuff to let those microbes start heating and working, right? And a lot of them do say, like Cleo says, to turn it every day. Well, that it is breaking that down, but you are not creating good soil life or a good product by turning it that often. So the best composters I know turn it the least that they can possibly turn it. So I think those are a waste of money. They probably are a great place to put your raw product, like we were talking about earlier, Sue. Put the raw product in there on the web and put it in there and let that break down in that barrel. You're going to take it out of that barrel and put it into really good compost, and that would be the best use of a barrel. What else we got, Jackie? See, Lori's got a question.
Well, the last one you kind of answered. How do I keep compost in town and not have it look bad? And you showed us your bin.
Yeah, and there's lots of ways you can make bins out of a station, right? And they work good to have aquatic creatures that love the dark, right? So when we have them exposed to the sun and the hot, dry winds, things aren't going well. So we got to have them shade. Torrential downpour, which, rarely happens in eastern Montana, then I need to throw a tarp or something over the top of it so it's not getting resaturated completely and leaching out my good stuff. I don't want it to do that. So I see Lori wants to know about the green products, right, Lori? So go ahead.
Yeah, that was my first question, but I've got another one too.
All right. Yeah, the green products, think of anything that was alive in the last 6 months, or it was alive when they put it up. So like hay, right? You think, hey, that must be a brown product that's dry. But if it's an alfalfa bale or a compost or a cover crop that's been baled, that was baled fresh, green, and high protein, right? So that is a green product, even though it's dry. And so I use that as one of my main sources of my green product is old alfalfa. And it can be breaking down alfalfa, that's fine, right? It's still considered a green product because when they baled it, it was high protein. It was probably 16, 18, could be 20% protein in that alfalfa bale. And when you buy alfalfa pellets, it's going to be even higher percent protein than that. It probably should be close to 18%. I would think in a product that you buy that's alfalfa meal or alfalfa pellet, because you're just going to wet it down and make it into a wet mush again, for a green product.
You can just buy pellets.
Mm-hmm.
I'm having trouble sourcing organic alfalfa and, green materials. So
yeah, that's a big problem. And I wish we could get more farmers, right, that just went right into organics, and they could be growing these products and putting them into the greenhouses and Home Depots or wherever that want to market the products, right? They would make a fortune. So anybody want to do that? I wouldn't mind going in on that idea, but I don't have the space or time. But yeah, it's definitely a need. Now the hay I have is not organic because I don't have any organic guys close to me that I can get product from that I'm confident that it doesn't have that many weeds in, right? So my farmer that I'm getting it from is not organic, but he's not into the GMOs. So you don't want GMO alfalfa if you can help it. But if you can't get anything else, it's going to be better than nothing. But it hasn't had any of the royal high new toxic chemicals or herbicides on it that are really bad in compost. So he doesn't have anything. He didn't use anything on his hay. It's just hay. And so if you can get just hay and they haven't sprayed anything to kill out the grasses, then it's going to be good stuff. It doesn't have to be organic, because it's going to be hard to find organic. And a lot of times when you do find the organic, it's going to have some hidden seeds in there that might be harder to kill. And it's, you're not going to necessarily always get it composted instantly. You may set the bale down, which I do, and then compost it. Well, I might have started some seeds in that spot where I set that hay bale down. Well, before I was getting it composted up to the 150 degrees to kill seeds. So there's just kind of little things you got to think about. But yeah, definitely. And if you can drive by a farmer's place, you got some good farmers in your area. He's got a really nice alfalfa field. Ask him, is that genetically modified alfalfa? Has it been sprayed? Right? Genetically modified alfalfa is getting sprayed with Roundup to kill out the grasses, because it's a huge problem in alfalfa production. Is I want to grow alfalfa, but after year 3, the grasses start coming in, and pretty soon I'm growing grass, and I can't make money doing that as a farmer. That's why they want to go toward the cleaner field. But okay, I'm getting right down a rabbit hole. What else we got? Chop up your fish parts, Sue says. I don't, Sue. I am a lazy gardener. I go right to the Fort Peck fish cleaning station with a great big garbage can and a couple liners, and ask the guys to throw their parts in there instead of send them down the chopper. And then I compost them whole in that same stackable you see, in that 4 foot by 4 foot area. And they're gone in the next turn. You can't even see them. They're completely gone. Right. So they have been just turned right into good stuff right away.
You put like a gallon of fish parts in that 4 foot by 4 foot container?
I've put as many as 4 fish in there before, and one was one of those great big ones down from the Missouri River.
Oh, the stir or paddlefish.
Yep. And I put some big catfish in there and some walleye. Those are just pure nitrogen going in, and so those are going to help heat a pile, right? So if I have a pile sitting there 140, 145, doesn't want to kind of get right into the 150, I throw a fish in there and get it a little bit wet again, it's going to fire up. It may go
Okay, Patty.
quickly.
So I got a pile that I started last year and it heated up, but I just don't think it's quite done. Could I add some fish and kind of get it cooking again?
Yep. You could add some alfalfa, some fish, some coffee. Coffee's a 20-to-1 carbon to nitrogen ratio, so it's a green. You think, well, it's brown, it's coffee grounds. No, but it's high protein. So it is definitely a green. So you can put in probably as much coffee as you can haul from any town that you can haul it from, and put it into the piles.
Okay. So can I pour say there's leftover coffee, can I just pour the leftover coffee or just use the grounds?
Yep, you can put the papers in, everything. Yep.
Okay.
Yep, it's a good source.
I'm gonna do it today.
Yep. And then, alfalfa pellets, they'll fire things up too.
Okay.
If you can get a farmer to bale some of those gorgeous cover crops when they're green and just right before they flower.
Okay.
That'd be perfect. Right? If you could get a few square barrels of them stored away and you can store them for years, right? You've still got it at that high protein when they cut it.
Well, I think I could just go out and hand cut some of that and store it in a garbage barrel.
Yeah.
Pack it in there and store it in a garbage barrel.
Yeah, get your old side and lay it down, dry it out in your yard, and then you could store it. Now, don't try to store green hay in a closed barrel that's not dry, because it's going to get wet and it may blow up.
Okay.
So you'd want to dry it just like you would hay before you try to store it. Okay. Otherwise, compost it right away when it's fresh. Okay, what are cover crops? Chloe wants to know. So Chloe, the farmers are planting multi-species plants together in a field instead of wheat to feed the soil microbes. So it's like composting in the field. So they plant a cover crop. It's going to improve the soil, stop soil erosion, and really take care of the pollinators. They're fantastic. And so then that farmer is either going to lay it down and make a mulch on his ground to improve his soil. But if you can kind of intervene and say, hey, can I buy some of that cover crop and put into your compost, that'd be fantastic. what are the name of the
I'm going
crop?
to try to grow some lentils this year just for that purpose.
Yep, some millet's super easy to grow. Sunflowers are great. I chop up sunflowers and put them in every compost heap I have. Lots of the flowers that I talk about, I don't know if you've watched any of our other shows, but the Phacelia, the Borge, the comfrey, right? Every gardener needs to have a patch of comfrey, right? I have the roots, so come see me. Not yet, they're still frozen, but in another month, I'll have roots to give away to people. So I'll mail them to you if you need to, but you've got to get those plants going. So those plants are going to be your green product for that compost, and you can cut the plant 3 times to make compost. So yeah, and see, we graze it. Yeah, they mob graze it to improve those soils on those cover crops. It's fantastic. Any other questions? We got any others on the list, Jackie? Other than the easy thing? What you got, Lori?
So I have a friend who's building me some compost bins right now.
Nice.
And
Sweet.
So wanted to make sure we're doing it right. And so it's like they're going to be built on the ground and they're wood slat sides so that the air can move through, right? Because you need the air. And they'll have covers on them so that it's shaded and doesn't get too much rain.
Right.
So, and then I was thinking sorry.
The first thought is that we don't want it directly on the ground. So I put together a pallet and then I put new slats in the pallet so that it only had like 1/2-inch gaps in the pallet to make a platform, right? So that I can take a shovel and clean that whole compost station out and into the next station. And then I can wash down that station with water. So you don't want to be in the mud and you don't want to be digging down in your soil every time you turn compost. So you're turning on this wooden platform that I created with a pallet for the bottom,
Okay.
which in your situation, you could get those great big long ones. But this is a concern with pallets that I've just been brought knowledge about. Of course, this makes sense, right? So don't use pallets that had any plants or food on it, because they have sprayed it. So it's got a chemical in the wood. It's a hidden thing going on out there. So it's really difficult to figure that out. But if you go to the implement dealer where they get these great big parts, they've got great big long pallets, right? And if you could get 2 of them, then you can turn 2 of them into one platform and they wouldn't have had any chemicals sprayed on them or anything.
Is there any way to know? I mean, we've just got lots of old pallets and wood and stuff lying
If you got a
around.
stamp on them that says citrus or the vegetable farm name or a farm name on them, you don't use them.
Okay.
You know, I've made a lot of stuff out of pallets and hadn't thought anything of it until this. And then the one day that I had a student cutting a pallet in the shop, and I says, "Wow, this stinks." And I'm like, this is good. So just to beware. So we're all about education. So, all right, what was the other half of your question? The lid sounds great. And making 3 stations. So you're gonna start in station A, move to station B in the first turn, move to station 3 in third turn, right?
So you're
a new one in station A now, because C and B can go back and forth until it's got the 5 turns done. Once it's got the 5 turns done, it should end up in C. Then you can use A and B, take C away and put it in the shade somewheres. And it's going to be half the mass, maybe even a third of the mass of what you started with. So it's not going to be much area. So then it needs to go in its holding place for 6 months. And your next batch could go in with that batch, just knowing, okay, I won't be using this until fall. Like if I make it now and I make a really good batch, I probably will use it come November, right? To put it out on the ground. I'm not growing in it yet. It's just going out on the ground. It's going to get grown in the spring. And so that's how you could kind of manage that.
But I could just leave it in one of those bins for 6 months covered and just keep it shaded and damp.
Keep a little eye on it, make sure it's not dried out. It's got to stay damp. When you get a hold of it, you can kind of like a sponge, not wring water out of it, but it feel cool. And we should have a live composting class, right, Sue? Are we gonna do that?
We are. I'm going to cut cattails to have on hand. Patty, I have a vision, so whenever
Nice.
you're ready to think about it.
Let's do it. Okay, we should probably wrap this up, Jackie. What do we usually say when we start wrapping things up here?
How do people get more information?
So they can get more information by joining our Facebook group, and they can join us on YouTube. That's where we try to put the recordings. Haven't done very well. Teaching school's gotten away lately, but we'll try to get this one on. And you can always support us on Patreon. That's a huge help, And so we got some tiny Patreon on there up to the bigger ones that would be more like a consulting thing, and we really dig right in and help you dramatically. But you can join us there on Patreon. That'd be a huge help.
And we want to thank Lori, Jacqueline, Lacey, Eileen, and Sue for their support on Patreon.
Yay. Yes, they're making it happen for us. We really appreciate that.
Look, there's more. What are we talking about next Saturday?
So next Saturday, you know what those plants we started? Yeah, I've got kale ready to transplant, and I'm sure other stuff is going to be ready to transplant soon. So I thought we would maybe hit the greenhouse. It'll be fun.
Awesome. Well, seedlings on our Patreon, please stay on the line for the after show where we're going to answer more questions. We want to thank everyone for joining us this week. And don't forget to send us your garden questions on Facebook or join us next Saturday.
Yes. And let's grow healthier. Let's grow a healthier world. See you soon. Bye now.
Grow healthy.